Good morning, County Council. I'd like to call to order this County Council agenda of October 23rd, 2025. At this point in time, as you are able, please join us in the singing and standing for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct our roll call?
Councillor Mackey,
Present.
Councillor McKay, Councillor Carlton, Councillor Pringle, Councillor McQueen, Councillor Nielsen, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Dickert, Councillor Kentner, Councillor Keaveney, Councillor Body, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Milne, Councillor Dobreen, Warden Matrosovs, Councillor Bourdignon,
Present.
Councillor Eccles, Councillor Hutchinson. We have all members in attendance today. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Let us begin by acknowledging with respect that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people known as the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. We give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the traditional keepers of these lands and waters since time immemorial. In our south lies the traditional territories of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Haudenosaunee. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and friendship with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. At this point in time, I'd like to put a call out for any declarations of interest for this council agenda. Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Item 6A, it's recommended that the minutes of County Council meeting and Committee of the Whole meeting dated October 9th, 2025, and the resolutions contained therein be adopted as presented. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Nielsen, seconded by Councillor McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next, we have item 6B. It's recommended that the closed session minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes dated October 9th, 2025, and the closed session Budget and Finance Committee minutes dated September 24th, 2025 be adopted as provided. May I ask for a mover? Moved by Councillor Dobreen, seconded by Councillor Keaveney. Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. We do not have any closed matters on this agenda for council this morning, nor reports. That allows us to move to the bylaws. It's recommended that bylaw 525425 be introduced and taken as read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the warden and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed into the bylaw book. This is a bylaw to confirm all the actions and proceedings of council. Moved by Councillor Dickert and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. News and celebrations. We will start off with Local Government Week. We have been seeing lots of Lots of sharing on our social media with Grey County. I thank them very much for highlighting different aspects of local government all week long. I think that's been a great public relations exercise to be able to show people what happens beneath the layers of what we know as local government. So this week does mark local government week all across Ontario. As the level of government that's closest to the people, municipalities are tasked with providing many services and programs that we all use on a daily basis. They are a critical element to our government system. So thank you to all of you who are here as elected officials. Thank you to all of our staff. And thank you to the many volunteers that help keep our local government moving, who work every day for the betterment of our communities. And we also have another recognition. October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Every October, Canadians come together to celebrate the contributions of people with disabilities in strengthening workplaces through inclusion. This month also raises awareness of the barriers people with disabilities continue to face and encourages us to take action to build a truly inclusive economy. More than 1 in 4 Canadians has a disability, and 74% of those workers experience barriers at work. 67% face barriers even before they are hired. The cost of exclusion is high. Closing the disability employment gap has the potential to greatly increase Canada's GDP. Further statistics show that inclusive companies experience higher income and revenue and up to 25% higher productivity. More information on National Disability Employment Awareness Month can be found online by visiting the Odin Network website. Okay, and we have a couple of, we have a staff announcement. I'm going to look to CAO Schertzer for the next one.
Great. Thank you, Warden Matrosavs, and good morning, County Council. I'm pleased to share some positive news regarding the Ministry of Health Paramedic Service Review, which took place last week. The service review is conducted by the Ministry of Health every 3 years to evaluate compliance with provincial standards. It includes on-site inspections, documentation reviews, and performance evaluation. A lot of work goes in behind the scenes in order to prepare for these service reviews for our paramedics team. Eventually, we'll receive a full service report, which we'll bring back to council with the full results from that review. But we're happy to report that our paramedics team received very positive feedback from the Ministry of Health Service Review team. The reviewers were impressed by the professionalism, the warmth, and preparedness of our staff. They especially highlighted how helpful and friendly our paramedics were with the field investigators and how organized and prepared Kevin and his admin team were. So I just want to both thank and congratulate Kevin and the paramedics team for all their work in preparing and organizing for this review and for receiving such positive initial feedback from the Ministry of Health Review team. So congrats, Kevin.
Excellent news to begin our morning. And with that, I'll put it out to County Council members for news to share. We'll start with the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Warden Matrosov. And this is a little after the fact, but on Tuesday of this week, I attended a screening, 2 screenings actually, of a film that was created by a gentleman by the name of Colin Field. And it deals with the Farmerettes. I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of the Farmerettes, but from 1941 to 1952, upwards of about 50 to 60,000 young girls from the ages of, I think it was 16 to around 25, harvested primarily fruits and vegetables in Ontario, primarily in the Niagara area, but there were camps in various places around the province. And it was a very heartwarming story. There was actually 2 farmerettes in attendance at the 1 o'clock showing. The one lady is 99 years old and the other lady is 96. And they were both very eager to tell their story. The film was called We Lend a Hand, and it was about the farmerettes and that whole program back in the 40s during the war. Service takes many forms. And as some of you might know, armies march on their stomach. So most of the young men were overseas fighting, but they can't do that unless they have food to eat. And farmerettes literally saved the harvest from those years so that the food could be processed and sent overseas to feed our armies in the fight against the Nazis. So it was, as I say, it's a little after the fact, but I was part of the program, which I'm very thrilled to be included in that. And I do want to point out that Grey Roots was a wonderful host. They did a wonderful job of looking after us, Doug Cleverly and the other staff down there. So thank you for that. And anyway, if you're looking for a really neat story, look up the Farmerettes. It's a remarkable story.
Well worth sharing. That's wonderful. Thank you. And look around the room for other, we'll go to Councillor Carlton.
Good morning, County Council, and thank you, Warden. A couple of announcements. So to start with, we finally have a CAO in place again. So Ryan's been with us now for 2 weeks, and that left us a vacancy on our council seat. So we filled that last Wednesday night, and starting November 5th, we will be welcoming EJ McComb. And for that, Friday night is our movie night at the Kilsyth Derby Arena. And the kids will start trick or treating at 5:30 and the movie starts at 7 o'clock with Hocus Pocus. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent. And other news from our municipalities across the county? We'll go to Councillor Dobreen and then we'll go to Councillor Eccles after that.
Thank you and good morning, Warden, County Council. I also wanted to share that the downtown Dundalk trick or treat will be held this Saturday, but in conjunction with a Halloween trick or treat at our Dundalk Fire Hall. So it's an afternoon affair and the kiddos can get out there. They can learn about fire safety. They can visit the fire hall and they can go downtown to our local businesses that are all contributing to this great afternoon event.
Thank you. Councillor Eccles.
There we go. Thank you very much. Yes, Halloween in West Grey, same thing on Saturday afternoon in Durham, hosted by the Durham BIA. It's a collaborative partnership, as most things are in West Grey. We're great partners with everybody. The Ag Society, BIA, and the West Grey Durham Lions will be in Durham Saturday morning for the Halloween. I'm up and down with the businesses in Durham. And November the 1st in Newstead, we have the craft show, probably one of the largest craft shows in southern Grey County and maybe in Grand Bruce County at the Newstead Arena on November the 1st. And then, as the Deputy Warden was saying, the warriors of the area don't go very far unless they're fed. So on the Sunday afternoon, the Newstead Lions, for their tremendous cultural delight, the pork and kraut dinner is on. And if you haven't been to it, you should get there. It is very wonderful. And to Mr. Millen, my mother was one of those farmerettes that spent many a summer in Niagara harvesting those crops. So good to hear. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we'll go to Councillor McQueen and then after that, we'll go to Councillor McKay.
Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Warden. Last Friday night, the South Grey Chamber of Commerce held their business awards with regards at the Homestead Resort, which is in the lovely municipality of Southgate, right? The mayors and deputy mayors were attendants from the 4 municipalities from that area. Good to see you, Scott. Nice to see you today. There was a number of awards were had, and it was congratulations to all the winners. I think it was a really good time. It was really good to reflect back on the volunteers and all that of our communities as well. Also to note, to carry on, as we know, the Blue Jays are going into the World Series. I don't think you want to be anywhere near Toronto trying to get a parking spot probably tomorrow night or Saturday, but they did move the Maple Leafs up to 5 o'clock. So they weren't going to be interference with regards to their games. And I think tomorrow night, the Raptors are playing as well as the Blue Jays. But just of note, as we know that the last World Series champs, which was the Blue Jays back in 32 years ago in 1893, I actually have baseball with a number of signatures from 1993, if you wish to take a look. My wife and I, at the time she wasn't my wife, but at the time we were in Florida the following year, and we went to Dunedin and had a ball and had a lot of the players sign the ball. So it was sort of a cool thing at that time, but because they were looking at possibly being contenders for the 94. But if you remember back, there was some kind of a strike and that year was canceled. And the Expos were doing very well that year as well. And then the Expos left. But it's going back a few years. But anyway, like we should take a look. I may trade it for a ticket. Thanks, Mr. Ward, Madam Ward.
Okay, thank you very much. He even brought the prop this morning. Wonderful. And we'll go over to Councillor McKay.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Warden. Talked about Halloween. Halloween in the village in Chatsworth will be on Sunday, 1 to 3. There's be treats and games for the kids. It's put on by the Ag Society. Also, the Ag Society, one of their volunteers, won Volunteer of the Year award, Sherry Brick. She does a lot of work no matter what, whether it's fall fair, the fish fry or whatever. And also, if you want to take a drive down Main Street at Chatsworth, you'll notice some new banners put on. The Legion put out a call. Any families that had veterans or people serving nowadays could get their banner put up on Main Street. So we had 20 put up, and we've already had calls from people. Why wasn't I told? Well, it was kind of a Legion thing within the Legion, but now it's getting out to the community, and there's a lot of veterans families still out in the township of Chatsworth that want to get some banners up. So we're going to run out of hydro poles, I think, before we get all the banners up. Anyway, we look forward to anybody going down, have a look, take a walk down Main Street and read all the names of the veterans and the people that are serving nowadays. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Indeed, I actually have driven through Chatsworth a couple of times in the last couple of days, and the banners look fantastic. And as a Legion member, I'm really excited to see this tradition spreading across communities. And with that, we'll go over to Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Warden Matrosov, and good morning, County Council. Just a couple of things. I wanted to share that our Meaford Dragons event is coming up on the 13th of November. This is the 17th annual, so it's a very successful event run by our Chamber of Commerce. The contestants have just been announced. It's going to be Lovebird, a restaurant on our main street, and brewer, Solo Fit Gym, Bounce Brothers, Field Guide, which is a business that makes natural skin products, and the Hub Educational Center, which we're excited about. So tickets are on sale now at Meaford Hall, and that's 7:30 on the 13th of November. And I also wanted to share that we had a presentation at our council this week from Lieutenant Colonel Joe Tobin from our military base. And I think County Council doesn't often hear very much about what happens at the base in Meaford. So we learned that this year there are 218 staff at the base. 1,800 students have been through training programs, and there's some changes coming to the base, and they're predominantly going to be focused on infantry training and leadership training going forward. So it's really exciting, and I wonder at some point if we shouldn't invite the Lieutenant Colonel to come and present to County Council, because it's really interesting what happens at that 4th Canadian Division Training Center, and perhaps the county be interested in learning more. Thank you.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And are there any other County Council? Oh, we'll go to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Matrosov. There's so much excitement around Halloween. Grey Highlands, we have 2 different organizations putting on 2 different Halloween events this weekend as well. The Markdale Recreation Committee is having the Boo Bash for the little ones because the Markdale Arena is unfortunately still closed. It'll be taking place at the Annesley United Church with a screening of a movie. That is this Friday. I will be there as your popcorn maker extraordinaire. And then on Saturday, the Hanley Institute in Flusherton is having their Haunted Hanley, and I will be there as a jump scare tactician. But I also just wanted to reach out and say congratulations to Wes Gray and the Douglas Street Haunted House. My family had a chance to get over there. They put on a fantastic haunted house, and it is exciting to see the hundreds and hundreds of people that I saw there on the Friday and waiting in line to get through their festivities. And the fact that all the funds go to the food bank is quite phenomenal. So just congratulations to Wes Gray on that one.
Thank you. And anything else? Not seeing any further hands? Okay, all right. That allows us to look for a motion to adjourn. So it's recommended that County Council adjourn at 10:21 a.m. this morning. I'll take it from moved by Councillor Eccles and seconded by Councillor Dobreen. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. We'll give a moment for our technology to switch over. Okay, I'd like to call to order this committee, the whole meeting of October 23rd, 2025. At this point in time, I'll put out a call for any declarations of interest on this agenda. Seeing no hands, we will proceed. Business arising for minutes. Seeing no hands, we will proceed. We do not have any delegations this morning. And so at this point in time, we can have a look at the 5 items that are listed under section 6 in terms of the consent agenda. And I'll put out a call if there are any that any committee of the whole members wish to pull for separate discussion. Looking for hands. Seeing no hands. All right, then. It is recommended, item 6, it is recommended that the following consent items be received and that staff be authorized to take actions necessary to give effect to the recommendations in the staff reports and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. That's all 5 items. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by, we'll take Councillor Pringle, and on the floor for discussion. Any discussion? Yes, sorry, Councillor Greg.
I think while it's contained within the consent agenda, it's worth noting the positive news from the expansion of Viking Sibes in Mount Forest as part of the item 4 or 5 there in the consent agenda. There's no questions to be asked to it, but it's certainly positive news for Mount Forest and Grey County and the surrounding area there to see expansion of manufacturing facility, particularly in these times when we've had so much tariff and challenge in terms of growing domestically. So great to see that that expansion so close by.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that item. All right, anything else? All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Next, we'll move on then to item 7A. It's recommended that report PSR CW 0825 be received and that staff be directed to begin necessary background studies at the former Patrol D location in Dundalk to inform the development of a new paramedic space at the location, and that staff be directed to establish a project budget in advance of the 2026 budget process of $2,472,000 to be funded by debenture, and that an RFP be issued prior to 2026 budget approval. So with that, then I will look for a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor to begin. Moved by Councillor Carleton, seconded by Councillor Mackey. It's now on the floor for discussion, and we'll begin with Director McNabb.
Yeah, we have this problem all the time. I can see it.
Morning, Ward and County Council. Here today to talk about the Dundalk Paramedic Base. Currently in Gray County, we own 8 bases or lease spaces to make up the 8. And currently, we're in the process of moving forward with building of the Feversham base. As a part of the comprehensive deployment review that took place in 22 and into 2023, part of that was to build additional bases throughout the county. The deployment review looked at the current base locations and determined they were in the right location, with Dundalk being located right in the town of Dundalk. And then being able to have places for ambulances to park to match the resources that were coming. Part of the plan was to add additional bases throughout the county to reduce response times in our rural areas. So the plan being Feversham was in 25, and then 2025, and then Ayton in 2026, Thornbury in 2027, and Cobble Beach in 2028. And then there was Holstein, I believe it was 2031. But in 2023, we removed that base at this time just due to budget reductions. So earlier this year, we were formally notified that due to growth in Dundalk, that the fire department would be requiring the use of their full haul to hold the fire trucks needed to deliver service in their area. And this picture on the screen is where our current base is now. We have the door that's marked there, and we occupy the bottom right corner of that building. We've been there since 2004, and it's been a great location, and cohabitated with the fire department quite nicely there. Because of the move, we have been looking at other areas within Dundalk, and this area is owned by the County of Gray, just off of Gray Street and Glenelg, access from Glenelg and Gray Street West. You can see there, that's the area of the old Salt Dome, as well as there's some open land in that area. There is an operations facility there that for the transportation department for winter operations. There's no proposed changes at this time. When we brought this report back in February as a part of the acquisition of the Feversham land, we did bring up about this potential that what's going to be happening in the Dundalk area. And at that time, we wondered about, converting that place. We have done preliminary looks at this with our in-house architect, and it's determined that there will be significant costs to renovate that building, and most likely not a good option this time to renovate that versus build a new base. So pending further site analysis, we feel that the best option would be is to build on the open area of the land at that depot. Again, keeping in mind if all the testing comes back okay with that location. With the review next year happening, if it gets approved with the budget, we understand that this is a lot of pressure with bases building going forward. And that's one thing that we will commit to do as part of this, is to look at our base builds over the next coming years with Ayton starting next year, and to ensure that, but the plan that we have in place is still required based upon call volume, and the requirements are still there. So we would hope to have that report back later next year.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to ask the Deputy CEO if he'd like to add on anything before we get started, or, okay, but he's on standby to answer questions depending on the nature of the questions. So with that, then we'll put it out to committee of the whole members, and we'll begin with Councillor McKay.
Yes, thanks through you, Warden Kevin. Is there any thought on the Dundalk base and the Feversham base, or are they to put one in between, or are they too far apart? And just a follow up is, if we have to build a new base for Dundalk this year, would the other bases be put off by a year? Or are you thinking build one in this year and build another one, next year. So you'd have two bases built within that budget year. So just a thought.
I believe the first question around Dundalk, where it is, there is a significant open area to the west of Dundalk that between Mount Forest and Dundalk into that area. So if you move closer to Feversham, I think you would pull away more from that southwest area of the county. So I'm not sure if going any further that way would be advisable as far as response times go into the mid portion of Southgate. As far as building bases, yeah, we already have Feversham on the way, and this would be a second one through 26. There is 8 in scheduled for 2026, and we have talked here about, whether, with the comprehensive deployment review, looking at that, and then where we go from there, making sure that our decisions are sound now that we're 4 years into the plan. That might be something that we could look at pushing bases out further.
Okay, thank you. We'll look around the room for any other questions. And we'll go to Councillor Greg.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Kevin. Just a couple questions. One, probably to finance. Just to speak to the debentures, do we have any debentures coming off the books in the next year or two? This is, and then in terms of how we're financing this debenture, it doesn't explicitly say, I don't think in the report, how long the debenture's for. I presume it's probably 15 years, just at a high level, looking at the rough numbers. And Kevin, just wondering, as we try to optimize and make best use of resources, it's great news that we have the property that you're looking at, that's a county-owned property, but was there any consideration to working with the town of Southgate and expanding the existing building? What type of cost comparison that might have created? Was that, because this is an unplanned expenditure at this time, it wasn't in the deployment. So I guess those are my first two questions, and then just a follow-up. Thanks, Jordan.
That I don't know about adding on to the base, whether they'll need to add on themselves. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask that question about if there's something that could be added on there, on top of that, or if they're actually building on beyond that themselves. So I'd have to ask that question. As far as the debenture time, I mean, look to Mary Lou to assist with that. I think our first debenture coming off would be Chatsworth based on the.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. Our apologies, we did miss putting the term of the proposed debenture in there, and it would be a 25-year. That's, and with regard to any debt coming off, we have an internally financed debt that was just over 7.2 million for the renovation and addition to this building. It comes off in 2031. And that'll be the first one that matures. Sorry, Grey Gables roof, it matures in 2030. So that was a self-financed as well when we replaced the shingled roof with a steel roof. And then Chatsworth matures in 2031 as well.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Greg, the CAO would like to add something before I go back to you.
Just further to the question with respect to whether or not there's the potential to potentially add to the existing fire hall. So obviously as Kevin's indicated, the fire department requires the existing space that we currently occupy. Based on what we're seeing from a potential growth and what the growth is happening in around Dundalk area, I anticipate, there could be some further expansion opportunities with the fire department, say in the future, plus for even for our own base in terms of be able to respond to increased response times that we anticipate happening in around the Dundalk area. So from a long-term perspective, this probably is our and why staff are recommending a new base. a new standalone facility to operate. But again, we're happy to take any direction from council in terms of exploring any other options with Southgate about potential expansion if the land is available to be able to do that.
Thank you. What are the annualized payments on those? You mentioned 7.2 million for the county renovations. Just wondering what the annualized payment is. And yeah, I'll leave it that first question.
Through you, Madam Warden. The debenture payment for this building is $706,539. And that, of course, has no subsidy on it. For the Chatsworth base, the payment that's self-financed is $65,424. I'd have to look at our budget for this year. So we would get 50%, sorry, we don't get any subsidy on that one because we self-financed it. Grey Gables, the payment is $73,234. And again, that's 100% municipal. Then when we move into Durham and Feversham, we are looking at debenturing through Infrastructure Ontario, a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So if we self-finance, the ministry will not give us 50-50 funding on the interest. But if we finance through Infrastructure Ontario, we would get 50% of the interest paid in our grant. In Infrastructure Ontario, lending rate yesterday for a 25-year borrow was rough, just under 4.5%, for example.
Okay. This is a big ask today to have the pre-budget approval. Could you speak further to the timelines that are required for such an ask as opposed to having this come back during the budget process in probably just 3 months?
Through you, Madam Warden, we did discuss that internally. If we wait until the budget bylaw passes and fingers crossed, the first week of January, then we are beginning the process middle of January, having it closed middle of February. So that's putting 5 months-ish delay before anything would happen. Given that the fact that we've been asked to vacate and you would want to get the building closed in and be able to occupy it, I think that the delay causes more issues than asking council for an early approval. And it's unfortunate that it's not in our plan, but that's something beyond both our control and, you know, the unprecedented growth that Southgate's having.
Okay, we're going to go to the CAO.
Yeah, thank you. Through the warden, just further to what Mary Lou indicated in terms of timing, we received further confirmation from Southgate that I think the desire is to have in about a year's time to be able to occupy the current space that we have. There's, I think, a little bit of flexibility there, obviously working together with Southgate. But given those timeframes, in order to complete potentially a construction of a new base, if that's again what council supports today, then that allows us to proceed in that timeframe to be able to work through award a contract, get all the site prep work done, actually construct a base and have it fully operational within that period of time.
Thanks for those responses. I want to point out on page 2, there's a line in the second paragraph. This growth is occurring across the county. However, the highest call volumes remain directly tied to urban areas. Kevin, you and your team have performed exceptionally well in the last several years, and that's demonstrated in the annual reporting that goes back to the province in terms of meeting your time commitments. I do wonder if this conversation, or if last council's conversation about Feversham might have been more extensive, if this report had been first and then Feversham, and we were looking at it in that light. So I am glad to hear that you are looking at bringing information back to council about that comprehensive service deployment. I point to that highlighted part of the paragraph as a rationale why we need to have a look at it. It's going to get extremely difficult to continue to build out to a certain level of service as opposed to responding to those times that we're currently still meeting, which is great, and we want to do it. But to be able to stay the course on our current plan and trajectory, and then have one like this introduced that's not outside of the plan is well, the county has a lot of financial obligations, and this demonstrates the inability to be able to meet all of them with the reports that we've been given. So I'm glad to see that there's intention of bringing that back so that council can have a fulsome discussion on what that timeline in the future needs to look like for those future bases. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to look around the committee of the whole table. I'm not seeing any further hands. We'll go over to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Mantrisov. And I think my question might be for Mary Lou. Just in terms, I'm trying to understand, you said that the subsidy doesn't cover the payments because if we're to consider self-financing. And you mentioned just the interest. Does the actual payment itself as a capital expense get covered as part of the grant between the province and the county for operating paramedics?
Through you, Madam Warden. I will refer to it as an interesting exercise. The grant we get for the 911 side provides us 50% of our eligible expenses adjusted for PSAB. PSAB is Public Sector Accounting Board. So if we build a $2 million base, it's not like they will give us $2 million over 25. They won't give us the $2 million, 50% of it in 1 year. So they will recognize the interest as an annual expense. And then they apply that as that's your council approved budget. And they give you 50% of that council approved budget next year. Part of the PSAB expenses are amortization. So if we put a 50-year life on a base and the base cost us $2 million, well, they give you $2 million over 50 years. There's your, it's not the best way for a municipality to have to operate, because what they're doing is we're paying the cost up front. They're giving you reimbursement at 50% of the historical value over the life of the asset. And then we're saving up more than that to replace the asset at the end of its lifespan. Or we're working on to having a plan. So whether the plan is the taxpayers of today, we're asking them to fund a transfer to reserve to put away money for the future, or the taxpayer of the day, like in this case, will be paying for the asset because we're borrowing.
Thank you for that, Mary Lou. And just a follow-up, if I may. So in this instance, there's no current asset, and it's a somewhat of an unexpected expense, right? And I fully respect what Southgate's going through and why the expense is coming up. So carrying forward to the, I guess it'll end up being the 2027 budget year, that's when they would start providing the depreciation value of this building on the annual basis. So you're probably that length of time before there's any actual increase in funding to help support the rebuild.
For you, Madam Warden, that's correct. So they're looking at our 2026 budget adjusted for expenses like amortization, post-employment benefits, future WSIB costs. And it's the approved budget, not the actuals, and they will give us 50% of that. So if our actuals were less, they're going to give us 50% of the actuals. If the actuals exceed that, they're still giving us 50% of the 2026 budget in 2027. So it's an imprecise science, and that's where we want to make sure that we at least budget as much as we expect, because what we're trying to do is get the funding that we should receive for the appropriate expenses.
And then just one final question, if I may. Thank you, Warden Matrosov. With the need of this base being, I would say, almost entirely growth related, is there DC charges that help to pay the capital expense of the build? Is there DCs available to help bring down what this payment might actually be?
Because we did not have that in the DC plan, because it was an unexpected expense, I can't take money out of DCs for something that wasn't in our plan.
Through the warden and further to what Mary Lou just indicated as well. So although it was unplanned and is not currently in the DC background study, through our review, we'll of course ask whoever consultant we'll be working with to see if there's an opportunity to still include some of that on a post construction basis. So that's something that we'll be exploring further. But at this current time, as Mary Lou indicated, there's no DCs that were allocated to this project.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, we'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just furthering on the part of the growth, obviously Southgate is growing and there's demand or need for more fire protection. We got to remember, we see growth every year when we do our budget and we just roll it in. But that growth is related to what's happening, and we have to catch up to that as well. So not that we're capturing on the DC side, but it's also our base asset or assets are the impact and all that value is growing because things are being built. But when things get built, they need more services. So we have to keep that in mind when we're going through that budget process, that, when we see that growth, it's related to, it's going to catch up to you. The other part I just want to briefly touch on to maybe where Kevin is also, we share a space in Markdale's fire department building with the EMS. There could be at some point something on the books right now, but that may change as well for the growth that we see in Markdale as well. So it's all going back to growth. You don't really need to comment there, but it just as we grow, there's growing pain, right? So and if we want to maintain that level of service for EMS and all that stuff, you have to sort of follow up. Anyway, there's some comments there.
Yeah, we see that in Markdale as well. At one time we had the whole west wing more or less, but now we actually share that with the fire department, and we have another parking spot off to the side where a smaller vehicle can fit. So we do get jockeyed around.
Okay, good. Healthy discussion there. I don't see any further hands. We've had good reflective responses from all of our staff involved. Thank you very much for that. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 7B. It's recommended that report PDR CW 6025 regarding the Town of Blue Mountains request for further planning approval authority delegations be received, and that a staff be directed to, number one, work with the town to consult with the public. Number two, to research options for delegating planning approvals for subdivisions, condominiums, and part lot control from the county to the town. And number three, to prepare a draft memorandum of understanding for future consideration by the town and county councils. And with that, I'll look for a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. So it's moved by Councillor Dobreen, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. It's now on the floor, and we will look virtually to Director Taylor this morning. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and good morning, Warden and members of council and anyone that might be tuning in. So some of you may remember an enthralling planning report from 2022, which was looking at the potential of delegating some planning approvals from the county to municipalities. And it was also looking at ways to streamline the planning process. Just as an interesting side note, I believe the lengthy presentation and discussion on that report was where we first got branded as delaying council from their nourishment breaks. Reflecting back, maybe not everyone found that presentation quite as thrilling as I did. But the outcomes of that 2022 report were that staff were directed to further explore efficiencies in the planning process, both at the county and working with our municipal partners, and that's been done by subsequent reports and actions. But the council also supported a motion which said that if municipalities were seeking further delegated planning approvals, they simply needed to pass a motion at their municipal council requesting as such, and then staff could enter into discussions to explore those potential delegated approvals. Excuse me, up until the summer of 2025, we didn't have any such requests from municipalities in Gray. But in June of 25, Town of the Blue Mountains Council supported a motion requesting some further delegated approvals. Following the passing of that motion by Town Council, Town and County staff have met on a number of occasions to start to map out a process of what this could look like if the county were to delegate said approvals. Following those discussions, town staff prepared an additional staff report in October of 25 and got authorization from Town Council to proceed to a joint public meeting to be able to explore this topic further. And so just as a bit of a refresher here, the specific delegated approvals in question are the delegation of the approval of draft plans of subdivision and condominium, including both red line revisions to those plans, as well as draft plan extensions to plans of subdivision and condominium. It would also include final approval and registration of subdivisions and condominiums. It would include part lot control, and it could also include condominium exemptions in that regard. Excuse me. So just as a bit of a refresher here, the county currently holds the approvals that I've just listed for 8 of our 9 member municipalities, all except for the city of Owen Sound, who retained those approvals when they rejoined the county after previously being a separated municipality. With respect to the above noted approvals, some of the approvals are currently done by County Committee of the Whole, so that would be things like draft approval of subdivision condominiums, versus other approvals are more administrative in nature, such as condominium exemptions or part lot control, and those have been delegated to county staff. Regardless of whether or not it's Committee of the Whole making the approval or county staff making the approval, none of these approvals are ever done without significant consultation with the host member municipality. So regardless of who the person signing the letter or approving it is, it's always done in discussion and in concert with member municipalities. And so just to loop back to the Town of Blue Mountains in specific, so county staff and town staff have met on a number of occasions, as I said, to discuss this process. I think staff are seeing eye to eye on what this process could look like moving forward. And we both agreed that a potential next step, subject to any feedback or support from county council today, would be the hosting of a joint public meeting. As council may recall, there was significant consultation done leading up to that 2022 report, both with the development industry and municipalities with respect to what delegations could look like. But we didn't directly reach out to the public at that stage. So we thought a good next step could be a public meeting in that regard, where we could hear feedback and such. Following that, staff would work together between the town and the county to look at what a draft memorandum of understanding could look like to share those, to delegate those approvals. Council may recall that in that 2022 report, there was a link to a memorandum of understanding that Simcoe County had used to delegate such approvals to one of their member municipalities in that regard. One of the key questions when we get to some of the further steps, and particularly with respect to that MOU, will be whether or not such delegations are to occur on a go-forward basis only, whether the delegation is also meant to apply to retroactively, so those would be subdivisions and condominiums that might already be in process at the time when the delegation happens, if it is to happen, or whether or not there's a phased delegated approach in that regard. So maybe in the short term, it's only done on a go-forward basis, and there's a plan put in place to delegate some of those in-process applications on a longer-term basis. There's certainly pros and cons to both approaches, and that's something staff at the town and the county would love to dig into further, again, should there be support for this approach. So if delegation were to happen, it would mean that the county would still be a review body on subdivisions and condominiums versus currently being the approval body. So there would be some staff time savings on the county's end, and that actually would result in some savings in county council agendas in that regard as well. With respect to an estimate in that, and it's a very ballpark at this stage, that 2022 staff report estimated that for the planners and our planning administrative assistant, we would see approximately 1/3 less staff time on subdivisions and condominium applications. Some of our partner departments and staff that review such applications, such as our transportation services and ecology staff, would still need to be reviewing the applications with respect to their impact on county roads and with respect to the natural environment impact. And so their roles are unlikely to change because their review role doesn't really change whether it's the town making the decision or the county making the decision in this regard. So at this point, with respect to the staff report, there's no specific financial or resource implications for this initial report. As the warden read the motion, it's simply seeking authorization to move forward with some further investigations, including a public meeting. Should delegation occur at some point in the future, and should that delegation be applied retroactively, it could mean that additional resources are needed, at least on a temporary basis, as it pertains to both transferring the files themselves and from a records management basis. And so certainly at both the town and the county, we'd need to look further into what that means. And there could be financial implications that would be explored in that future staff report with respect to the revenue impacts it would have on the county. On the one hand, it could be less application revenue coming in. On the other hand, it might mean that there's slightly less expenditures, particularly from an appeals-related process with respect to appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So with that, that's all I have at this stage, but certainly happy to take any questions from council if there are any.
Thank you very much, Director Taylor. First, we'll go online to Councillor Bordenio.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and good morning, County Council. Thank you, Director Taylor, for the report. So just a couple of questions. The first one is, so to be clear, the next step would be, if this was going to go through this committee, would be a public meeting to get input, I guess would be my first question. And just on the financial implications on the second question, just reading through your report and your verbal update this morning, you mentioned about 1/3 of time would be saved. So is that's at the county level, I would assume. So just those two questions, please, through the warden.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. Thank you for your questions, Councillor Bordenio. So with respect to perhaps the second question first, yeah, the staff time estimate was specifically with respect to county staff time that would be applied to the application. And I believe Mr. Postma had some preliminary comments in the town's report. It certainly would be some additional staff time at the town level. In speaking with Mr. Postma, I don't think it would be significant, but no doubt that there would be some additional staff time, particularly on the administrative end, with respect to some of the back end dealings on some of those files. Once council has already made their approvals and staff are working through that registration process in that regard. And I apologize, Councillor Bordenio. I answered your second question first, and in the process, I forgot your first question. My apologies there.
Thank you, Director Taylor. Sorry, through the warden. Just in regards to next steps and after the public meeting, then afterwards, if just for clarity purposes.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. So yeah, I think we'd work with the town to organize that joint public meeting. At that stage, depending on what we heard, we could look at whether or not there's a need for any type of interim report at the town or county level with respect to sort of a what we heard. Here's the feedback we heard. Or it might proceed directly to staff-to-staff discussions on starting to put together the framework of what that draft memorandum of understanding could look like. Ultimately, that draft memorandum of understanding would need to be presented back to both town council and county council for their consideration and feedback in that regard before there could be any bylaw passed to delegate it. One of the things we've talked about on a staff-to-staff basis is as we're potentially drafting that MOU would be to have some further discussions with some of our neighbors that have been through this before. I know informally in talking to Simcoe County staff, they've delegated these approvals to most of their member municipalities, and they certainly said the process evolved from the first time they delegated it to the most recent time they delegated it, and there's been lesson learned. So we're hopeful that maybe we can build upon some of those lessons learned in other counties and maybe have a more expeditious MOU process in that regard. But certainly happy to take any direction either from county council or the direction provided back to town staff from town council on what those next steps and when those touchbacks with each of our respective councils would be.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a quick comment follow-up, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Through the warden. Yeah, thank you for all that, Director Taylor. It's quite supportive at the local level for sure, because we do have a full, robust planning department, and this is something that council feels that would help expedite approvals as well as working with the developers and less repetition on work. And we do have the workforce there. So I thank you for the detailed report. Looking forward to, see remember the original one in 2022. I actually enjoyed the report too. So it wasn't just you, but all kidding aside, I think it's a great step forward. And I know that even if we do proceed with the public meeting, we'll come back to this council. So thank you for the details.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Matrosoff. Director Taylor, you kind of touched on it very quickly there at the very end of your opening comments. Just wondering if you can expand on the county's role in any OLT appeals, if we're just a commenting body. Do we have any involvement then on the OLT appeals, or is it just strictly a TBM situation?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Nielsen, through you, Madam Warden. Each appeal is dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Strictly speaking, what typically happens right now is where there's, say, a plan of subdivision application and we have a partner zoning amendment application at the municipal level, if those were to get appealed, most typically the county would be a party to the Ontario Land Tribunal proceeding as the approval authority on the subdivision, and the municipality would be would also be party to those same proceedings as the approval authority on the zoning bylaw amendment. And so if the county was no longer the approval authority, there's less likelihood that the county would be included or wish to seek status at that Ontario Land Tribunal proceeding. I'll caveat that to note that say that depending on the specifics of an application, if, for example, there was concerns about county level infrastructure, so maybe a county road, the county may still choose to seek either party or participant status at a hearing. But by default, the county would be out of a number of those discussions unless there was sort of a more direct county impact in that regard. And I will say that the examples shared from the County of Simcoe with respect to the MOU did have some extensive wording in that memorandum of understanding with respect to decisions made by the member municipality that could impact county policy or county infrastructure in that regard. So we'd certainly look to spell some of that out in the MOU and just hopefully continue on with the existing working relationship we already have on a staff to staff and council to council basis in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Looking around the room for any further comments or questions, we'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And given that the county does spend a significant amount of time working on various files for the Blue Mountains, would it be fair to say that if this plays out the way that it is proposed, we could probably save enough money to pay cash for that paramedic station in Dundalk? Would that? Perfect. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Okay, the Deputy Warden has formed that in the form of a comment rather than seeking answers from county staff. Thank you. Okay, anything else? All right, I see no further hands. Thank you very much, Director Taylor, for that additional information. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. That allows us to, we have items 7C, so one more for discussion, then we have closed session. So we're at 11:05. I'm going to call a break until 11:15, and then we will carry on after that. Thank you. If I could just please invite our committee, of the whole members to come back to the horseshoe. Okay, we have one more item for discussion, which is item 7C. It's recommended that report LTCRCW 2225 Ministry Survey in respect to repurposing Rockwood Terrace Long-Term Care Home be received, and that staff be directed to advise the Ministry of Long-Term Care that the existing Rockwood Terrace Long-Term Care Home may have potential for future redevelopment and reuse as a long-term care facility, and that any such future use be subject to feasibility studies to assess viability, and that staff advise the ministry that extending the operational lifespan of the current Rockwood Terrace facility would present significant operational and financial constraints, and that staff provide an additional response to the ministry alongside the survey response that indicates that the County of Grey does not have the capacity to operate a fourth long-term care facility unless such operation has no short or long-term impacts on the property tax levy, and that action be taken in advance of County Council approval in accordance with subsection 26.6B of our procedural bylaw. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? It's moved by Councillor McKay and seconded by the Deputy Warden. It's now on the floor for discussion, so we will look to Director Cornell. Good morning.
Good morning, County Council. Oh boy. Following Director Taylor and a break and potentially the report before lunch, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure. I'll have to talk to Scott about how he handles that. Okay, good morning. Through you, Warden Matrosovs, who just read through the recommendations of the motions of the report. I just want to remind County Council of the demographic surge that we're expecting over the next few years in terms of the need for long-term care. And we believe that that is what has prompted the province to be seeking this information and sending out these surveys. That in addition to their commitment to increase the number of long-term care beds in Ontario. So the warden did an overview of the recommendation, a little bit of a summary of the report. And I was just here at council, at the last council meeting regarding a survey regarding the bed allocation at Grey Gables to access the county's readiness. And here I am again to discuss responding to an additional survey that the province has issued with a deadline of October 24th, requesting feedback on the potential continued use of the existing Rockwood Terrace as an operating long-term care home. There's lots of details in those recommendations and lots of details in the background of the report around previous considerations of reuse of Rockwood Terrace. And I'm just going to jump ahead to page 4 of the report, or 40 of the package, and just take us through what staff are recommending be included in the response to this survey. I will also just note that it is a second survey, and I do think the County of Grey is in a unique situation that probably many operators in the province aren't in, where they have a current build and a current, which will result in an existing building left vacant, and also a current application of beds that have been awarded on the books. And so that's why there's 2 surveys that maybe could have been one, but couldn't, because most operators wouldn't find themselves in this situation. So in looking at what staff is recommending that be included in the response, just confirming that there are no plans for the existing Rockwood Terrace building following the completion and transition to the new Rockwood long-term care home, and that we plan to have those discussions regarding future use to begin in 2026. I give an overview of the facility age and the assets that go along with it. The existing building's nearly 50 years old and increasingly requires significant asset management investment. A modern, efficient long-term care home would require extensive redevelopment to meet the current standards and regulatory requirements. And there's an opportunity for us to comment on the operational constraints and the capital investment. Staffing is another area of concern or potential risk in operating a second long-term care home kind of on that campus. Operating both facilities would require approximately 190 additional specialized staff. And we're actively working on our recruitment and onboarding plan for the additional 35 staff to operate the new long-term care home in the new building. So I think it's important that we comment on that in the survey. And then the financial impact, just noting that Grey County currently contributes $25,000 to $30,000 per bed annually from the levy to support long-term care operations, and adding beds would significantly increase the county's financial burden. And then finally, any comments on the potential for redevelopment? Should the above challenges be addressed and pending extensive feasibility analysis, in italics, there may be potential to redevelop the existing building to support continued long-term care use over the next 25 to 50 years. This would require sustained investment in asset management to extend the building's lifespan. And if the county were to be considered as an operator, an alternative operating and capital funding model would be required to address the significant concerns with additional burden on the county property tax supported budgets. And any future reuse would be subject to county council's further review, evaluation, and approval. And so I'll leave it at that. The list of recommendations ultimately to say we're seeking council's approval to complete the survey with those items noted by the deadline of October 24th.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I will now look to committee of the whole members for questions for Director Cornell. We'll start with Councillor McKay.
Thank you. Through you, Warden, has there been any interest or have you heard anything of any private organization or company that would take this Rockwood Terrace that we have now over and redevelop it into a long-term care?
And through you, Warden Matrosovs, Councillor McKay, no, that has not been explored at this stage. So if there is interest and the will of County Council is for us to do that exploration, we could do that. But at this stage, no one has approached us in that sense.
Okay, oh, sorry, we'll go to the Deputy CAO and then I'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Through you, Warden. Yeah, just to add to Ms. Cornell's response there, I think it's reasonable to believe that that might be an avenue the province might consider. And that's one of the reasons why we have highlighted within the report, and we're seeking your approval to highlight some of the operational constraints. A private operator looking for 190 staff right next door to where we need 190 staff would be a significant competition in this area. We do feel that it would be very difficult to staff a secondary home. And so we want to make sure the province is aware of the constraints that would be here. Some of those constraints would only apply to the county, but some of those constraints would apply if the province was look to a third party to possibly take on that facility. And so that one of the reasons why we've highlighted those constraints is they're not simply constraints that would apply to us if we were to operate it, but would apply if the province was to look to a third party to potentially take that on.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Councillor McQueen next, and then we'll go to Councillor Mackey after that.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thanks for that comment, the CEO. That was sort of my thought too. Why would we want to create competition against ourselves? Because we're going to have trouble, upgrading staff. So I think you might want to have a further conversation. I thought at one time we talked about the possibility of that becoming an assisted living building, which is a stepping stone for 4-year long-term care, which to me, makes a lot more sense. And then you're not drawing on the same type of stuff as you are for the long-term care, but you're also creating an opportunity for that before you get to, and so you're sort of setting yourself up for a good point basement. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but you know what I mean? It's sort of, you're sort of in the same area. To me, that makes a lot more sense. And I think it was just noted on the news just the other day that the fastest, as we all know this, the fastest demographic group that's growing is the baby boomers, which are going to have a lot of demands on all the systems, as we know, and we keep hearing that and I keep reiterating. So, assisted living makes more sense in my mind, but I think we need to have that conversation sooner than later as well.
Yeah, through your ordinance to Councillor McQueen's comments and questions. As Director Cornell's noted, we don't have confirmed plans, but the plan is to start those conversations and discussions with council in 2026 to explore those options further, which could be what was identified as a potentially assisted living facility or affordable housing build, whatever it might be. We want to explore those options with council in terms of what that looks like and whether or not that's county operation the facility or a private operating facility as well. So all those options and everything in between would be potentially reviewed in 2026 with council is the current plan.
Just to follow up that, I think even more importantly, as we go through that process, I think we want to protect ourselves, that we want to make sure if we did sell it to a private consortium, that they weren't putting long-term care in, for the simple fact that it's competition to ourselves. I think we want to think about that because, for staffing and all that stuff, like, why would you, and then all of a sudden they turn around and get, beds, and then they turn around and make it long-term care where you just, I think you just, shooting yourself in the foot in that one.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go on to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Warden. Good morning, County Council. Jen, I guess when I first read this report, I was somewhat surprised that the ministry is even considering redeveloping a class 3 home. I mean, we were told for a long time that, that home couldn't be redeveloped. It was going to be far too expensive. And now they're turning around and looking at the potential of possibly doing it. So I guess if you could refresh my memory on what the cost was going to be for us. I mean, we're into $96 million now on a new build. And if there was potential that this current home could be redeveloped, I guess I'm not sure where the math is coming from, why it would even be, in the cards to look at. Because we've been told all along that, it was going to be far too expensive to redo that old home. Thanks.
And Director Cornell, just if you're going to attempt a figure, I would think that would also have to be in perspective to how long ago that was calculated and what we've noticed about the actual current building and how that's changed as well. So I'm not sure what kind of response. We'll go to the CAO.
Thank you for that. And if I miss anything, Jen, but back in 2012, the estimated cost to redevelop the existing facility at that time to meet the standards at that time as well was 14 million. However, we think this would be obviously significantly higher today to the building's obviously age. Obviously the changes that we've seen in terms of the regulatory and legislative requirements as well. So as well as what we've seen in terms of construction costs overall. So that's the latest figure that we have, which is now 13 years old. Was still pretty significant investment even back in those days, dollars, so to speak. In 2023, we also did a follow-up study completed to explore the potential repurposing of the existing Rockwood Terrace building once the new facility is completed, and the proposal considered at that time potentially converting the building into 54 affordable rental units. That report noted that while the structure is generally in good condition, repurposing would require full replacement and renewal of all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and sprinkler systems, many of which are ending their lifespan. A Class D cost estimate of approximately 20 million was provided at that time for internal renovations for a 54 unit affordable rental unit. So just to give you some context in terms of what what we're aware of based on previous studies and work. But like I said, we think it would be significant cost to increase to take that Class C building to a Class A facility to meet the current long-term care requirements. And that's just that cost plus all the other challenges as noted in the report about actually operating it as a long-term care facility.
Thank you. No, the report was very good. It was just more from a history standpoint. You know, I think about the Owen Sound Hospital built in 1984. So it is the same age as what Rockwood is. And I don't believe anyone would ever think about tearing down that hospital. But here we have a long-term care facility that we've made a significant investment. And, you know, I think a lot of us do believe that there's value in that building. It is still a good building not that I'm an engineer, but I've been in it a number of times, and it's a pretty good building. And it would be nice to see it repurposed. Not that we want to take it on, or at least I don't think we should be taking it on at all, but I think there's value in that building. So I wasn't sure if the ministry was changing their actual requirements around what Class C and Class A was. I was hoping they weren't, but thanks.
Great, thank you. And through you, Warden Matrosovs. No, as far as I know, there is no change from the ministry perspective in terms of the building's design standards. I think they're casting a wide net to see what is possible to be able to meet the demographic need that is coming and to fulfill their commitment of opening the 30,000 additional long-term care spaces in Ontario. So I think they're just leaving no stone unturned, but no changes to the design standards. And I agree. And what I'm hearing from County Council is sooner than later, bringing some of those discussions and options for consideration of potential uses for that existing building.
We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. Thank you for the report. I echo my colleagues' comments about if they want to redevelop this facility, why are we building a new one? But if you could refresh my memory that the redevelopment or the beds that we were awarded for Rockwood Terrace, the additional beds, carried with it a similar condition that it had to be a new standalone facility, that it couldn't be an addition? Or was that specific to the structure of Grey Gables? I have a follow-up after.
Thank you, and through you, Warden Matrosovs. So there were two separate proposals submitted to the Ministry of Long-Term Care that were very unique to each site and each community, Grey Gables and Rockwood Terrace, that were the result of a number of years of discussion and debate. And so the Rockwood Terrace proposal that was submitted to the province and subsequently approved was the standalone build of the 128 beds. So 28 additional beds to the 100 existing in a new building. And so this survey is specifically just looking at what are operators doing with the old building, and is there any options there that the Ministry of Long-Term Care should know about in order to make their plans or fulfill their commitments.
So my follow-up, thank you. Is there anything, would this lend, or how we respond to the province? There's kind of a twofold question here. Was Rockwood Terrace, the original Rockwood Terrace, built with provincial funding that would, like schools, obligate us to have provincial input on its future use? And the second question is, based on our first survey response about we're not ready because we're in the midst of this development to pursue the 62 additional beds at Grey Gables, could our response help elevate better funding to support the expansion of the new development at Grey Gables? I'm thinking the funding currently available for that development was not as significant as Rockwood Terrace, or it's gone backward. And I want to thank you also for pointing out that the taxpayer in Grey County contributes $25,000 to $30,000 per bed per year. And when you factor that into 319 beds, that's $7.5 to almost $10 million, $8 to $10 million that the taxpayer is funding to house our seniors. And I think it's significant. So to add another 100 beds or 28 beds or however many beds we could get into a facility and then compete with ourselves, I have to echo what my colleagues are saying, is we can't go down there now.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Warden. So there's a number of moving parts with this, as there often is with the Ministry of Long-Term Care. So your first question around the original Rockwood Terrace and the beds, it is different, I think, than in the school system. But ultimately, the Ministry of Long-Term Care awards beds to operators. Private operators receive licenses, and municipal and private operators can sell and trade their beds, where municipal operators, all of the negotiation and transition of beds happens with the Ministry of Long-Term Care. So if a municipality is thinking of adding beds or releasing beds, they go back to the Ministry of Long-Term Care, who then redistributes them however they choose to do so. All that to say, we are linked directly with the Ministry of Long-Term Care in terms of how a municipality uses their beds and where they are put. We would need to seek permission to move them from one community to another and so forth. The second question around the funding, there's been about 3 to 5 different funding models for redevelopment over the last 15 to 20 years. There was a long period of time where there was no additional beds. And when we first entered into this proposal state just before the pandemic, that was the first announcement of new beds in a significantly long amount of time. Since then, there's been varying iterations of construction funding support. The one that is currently out right now that is linked with that survey and the Grey Gables proposal is probably the most supportive funding policy of the iterations of construction funding. I'm looking to my colleague to nod to say that that's close. The challenge with the Grey Gables proposal is that the construction funding and the capital funding is to support the new beds or beds that are going from a class C or D to a class A. And so a portion of the Grey Gables proposal are already class A and therefore aren't eligible for the construction funding. So our response to either of those surveys will give the Ministry of Long-Term Care information and context, but I'm doubtful it will do anything to change the construction policy, the funding policy.
And if I may just clarify, I wasn't here 50 years ago when Rockwood Terrace was built, neither for any of us in this room. The question my final question is the structure that housed the beds. I understand, thank you for clarifying. It's the beds that the province owns or redistributes, which we fund. The structure, the bricks and mortar, is ours alone, and we have full discretion on what we do with it going forward.
Thank you. And great, excellent question for clarification. Yes, the bricks and mortar is an asset of the County of Grey.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Counselor Greg next.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward report. Thanks, Jen. I just have one question. Why even insert the clause unless such operation has no short or long-term impacts on the property tax levy? It seems to me, once I heard Councillor Eccles mention that somewhere in the past, the province or the federal government's created a program with guarantees they were going to fund it and then walked away from that guarantee and it fell on local municipal shoulders. So I'm just wondering why not have a period at fourth long-term care facility, period, stop, done, don't need that additional language.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Warden, our intention is to make it abundantly clear that there's not an inkling of desire of the County of Council without bringing a formal report and approval to be operating a fourth long-term care home. We are included it in the proposed language just to ensure that it's been written out in black and white and is clear. I don't know, CAO Schertzer, if you have anything to.
Through you, Warden, and just to further to Director Cornell's comments, yeah, we're happy to take any direction, obviously, from council in terms of the actual response to the province, and based on, again, what we're hearing in terms of feedback around this horseshoe, I think we can strengthen that language or not include some of those statements as part of the actual survey response. So we're happy to, again, to take some further direction from council with respect to that. So, and to see Niall maybe as a your Warden.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. Just to add to that slightly, I think the reason we put that language in there is on the maybe outcome that the province comes back and says we really want to reactivate these beds. We can then have the conversation with if we drew a line in the sand right now. There wouldn't be the potential for the province to come back and say, right, we do want to reactivate these beds. We do want you, the county, to run them. We're going to give you all the money in the world to run it. If we draw the line in the sand, they may say, well, we want to reactivate those beds. We may expropriate the home from you and have a private operator open up next door. I think we kept that language in so that we were able to come back potentially to council at some point in time and say, would we rather a private operator go into competition next door to us, or would we rather operate these beds on the basis of full provincial or federal funding in the future? And that was, I think, the rationale behind not leaving it quite as a firm full stop at that point, or period at that point, was to allow us to come back potentially with that conversation if the province does wish to reactivate the beds.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Just briefly, and it was raised, Grey Gables was raised in the sense of the construction model that Director Cornell said, because what was applied for was a brand new build. And this is why we need to have that further conversation. Is that exactly where this body wants to go, where you put a wing on it and you add the 62 and you get full funding on a wing and you move forward? But we need to have that conversation at some point. Obviously, the province is really keen on moving forward. So that, because that's what makes the bigger pill is on Grey Gables, you're not getting funding for the current 62 beds, but there was part of that model that I think also needs to be shared with County Council, that the current Grey Gables would be converted to a long-term care home with revenue that offsets the 62 beds that are being funded with no subsidy. We need that conversation at a later date.
Okay, thank you. And any other comments or questions? Seeing no further hands up, good discussion. Thank you very much, Director Cornell, and thank you to the CEO and Deputy CAO for the further information. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we have a little bit of time to start into our closed session and we will break for lunch accordingly at noon, but we are going to move ourselves in. It's recommended that the committee of the whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss number one, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or board by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency or of any of them, information supplied in confidence from the province of Ontario. Number two, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board with regards to negotiations with the province of Ontario. And just a moment. Okay. All right. So with that, then may I ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Mackey. Any discussion on going into closed? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. I'll just give a moment for the right bodies to be in the room.